Welcome to MUFON Los Angeles. Scott Mandeleker completed his doctorate in East-West Psychology from the California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco in 1992. His PhD combines eclectic Western psychology with an intensive study of Eastern religions and included years of formal training in U.S. and Asian Buddhist temples and Zen and other traditions. After leaving monastic life, Scott earned a BA in Buddhist Studies and an MA in Counseling, and he began a private practice in spiritual counseling, which he maintains in San Francisco and in his travels. He has published over a dozen essays on metaphysics, Eastern religions, and the spiritual meaning of ET contact and the UFO presence. Scott's interest in the phenomenon of ET identity focuses on the reality of cosmic contact. And his first book, From Elsewhere, Being ET in America, is about those who have uncovered their cosmic roots. His second book, recently released, is called Universal Vision, Soul Evolution, and the Cosmic Plan. And it integrates Buddhist and Eastern wisdom with the metaphysics of ET contact, UFO agendas, and global transformation. Please welcome Scott Mandeleker.
Thank you, Don. Let me turn this mic on, right? Okay? Everybody cool? I want to thank Don and the board of MUFON LA, as well as all of you here. We're going to have to work with the sound. Okay, work with the sound. If we get that tinny, let me know or something. Don and I have sort of been in touch on and off for 5-7 years with an idea of someday having me come here. And so in some sense this is like the culmination of a long-term sort of plan waiting for the right time for you, for me, maybe for world process. What I'm going to do tonight is give you more of a philosophical perspective on UFO and ET contact. No slides, no proof, nothing too sexy. Certainly coming from my personal experience, certainly coming from coordinated research in the sense of having met many, many people around the world who've had contact and who have a special relation to the UFO ET matter. But what I'm going to present tonight is not empirical, and it's very subjective. And so it's very important for you to realize, of course, that while documentation is quite useful, it doesn't answer deeper questions. To see traces of UFO activity doesn't tell us, as in Daryl Sims' presentation to come, the mind of the alien. Tonight I will talk a little bit about this mind of the alien, not in these terms, but extraterrestrial perspective is one of old souls, not so different than those who've developed themselves spiritually through a tradition like Buddhism or Hinduism. And so what I offer is a coordination of metaphysics, spiritual teaching, and an understanding of the relationship between Earth and our cosmic neighbors, and why now. And this is about global process, global shift. So now it's about 8:25. I'm thinking I'm going to speak until about 9:30 or so and give you a lot of information. And then about that time, 9:30, 9:45, we'll have some Q&A until about 10:15. So please, hold the questions and find what's most important. The structure of what I'm going to do tonight, first I want to give you an introduction to myself and an overview. And then I want to get into some of the specifics, like from my second book, and Don pointed this out, book, Universal Vision, Soul Evolution, and the Cosmic Plan. Soul evolution and the cosmic plan. This is what the UFO ET phenomenon is all about. Documented evidence doesn't tell us much about soul evolution and the cosmic plan. Eastern religion tells us a lot. The claims of people who've had contact tells us some more. Certain kinds of out-of-body experiences that one may have had, that I have had, tell us something. And the claims of some people who say that they are extraterrestrials, that they are from elsewhere, they are the visitors, and they look like you or me, these perspectives tell us some more, as well as channeling. Channeling, of course, has a bad name, sort of like, jogging. Jogging was very popular in the 80s, and then people hurt their knees, or people had heart attacks around the reservoir. And so it's a little less fashionable, or the low-salt diet. Now they realize that if you eat too little salt, you might hurt yourself. Maybe the body needs some fat, some salt. Channeling, likewise. Is there anybody who does not, I'm putting my hand up, not because I'm answering my question, but because, I know I've heard of channeling, so I'm not going to raise my hand if I said anybody doesn't know it. But that light is like really irritating, but there's no way around it. I was in Laughlin. You may look at me and think, who's this guy, Come on, show us the Wendell Stevens photos. Come on, I want to see those pictures again. But believe it or not, yours truly, little old me, was the final speaker at the UFO conference in Laughlin just a couple of months ago. I know this is like not good for the video to have the speaker with his hand up, I just saw the movie Dr. Strangelove again last night. Very, very funny, totally apropos of today. And, the Peter Sellers character is in the wheelchair, and he's trying to force his hand down when he's talking to the president about this program of what they should do post-nuclear holocaust, and how they'll just go basically 1,000 meters down and have a eugenics new society with 10 women per men. And somebody goes, Monsieur, don't get, he brats his hand down because he's basically still from the Nazi area. So I don't mean anything weird by my hand being up like this. In Laughlin also, they had these sort of battery of blaring lights on us. So I really couldn't see anybody's face. So it's like television. How many people believe that there could be something valuable, some valuable information coming from a channeled source where somebody, how many people would say that's valuable? Okay, or potentially. Okay. How many people think that all channeling is bunk hokum, garbage? Okay, thank you for that brave man for raising, or other person. First of all, I believe that channeling is only as good as the quality of consciousness of the channel, the purity of intention. And that's the case with any kind of spiritual teaching. And that's going to be definitely the case tonight in terms of how you evaluate what I have to say. When I talk about cosmic plan, soul evolution, my out-of-body experiences. The quality of the message in the spiritual world, in terms of spiritual teaching, it would be really beautiful if you guys could just like turn that light off. But I don't think that's possible, right? Not possible. Okay, thanks, I appreciate it. Television is like that too. They aim three camera cannons at you. The quality of information depends on the quality of the messenger when we speak about spiritual teaching. And the true judge, the true arbiter of the truth is you. In all that I say tonight, bear in mind that, of course, this is one perspective. But I tell you, as far as I know, there are answers to a lot of the questions that are commonly asked. And I could be called arrogant, but the questions like, what's the purpose of life? Why did this thing happen? Why are they here? Why now? Why is there abduction? What is the higher dimensional world, or those worlds. These things all can be answered. It's not so difficult. But you have to first have a steady and quiet mind. And so how many of us can sit quietly for 35 minutes or an hour and let the mind be at ease? So, rambling. I'm going to draw upon one of the there's several sources that I will draw upon then tonight, okay? First of all, many years study of psychology, religion, Eastern traditions, 10 years counseling with individuals around the world, US, Japan, Israel, who've had paranormal experience. Many years of my own paranormal experience, which I'll explain. Writing 2 books, and studying some channeled material. And in particular, there's a source called the Ra material, the Law of One, Carla Ruckert, channeled in the early 80s, which I think is the most mature and important channel document that's in English that I've seen. And some of the metaphysics I present will come from that. What they called, and I'll explain who they were. What they said is that this whole UFO ET phenomenon is a hole in the curtain. The curtain normally separates our horizontal awareness, physical world, 5 senses, intellect only, separates us from the infinite creation, multidimensional awareness, higher self, ET groups, other worlds, cosmic plan, past lives, future lives. This is not New Age talk. These concepts are as old as humanity's religion. You know, the Vedic traditions of India 6,000 years ago, talking about ETs and UFOs, talking about gods and heavenly demons, talking about powers of mind going through walls and flying. No big deal. This was all well understood, or at least very well discussed, 6,000 years ago in India. The quality of what we see through this hole in the curtain depends on your eye, the seer, and the quality of the aperture that we're looking through. If you see simply documented evidence, what MUFON normally confines itself to, empirical material, empirical data, you won't necessarily develop your internal seeing function. The quality of what you understand beyond the curtain, the universal order, how it is, what's the purpose of life, earth and cosmic plan, very really depends on you and how well you develop your mind. And if you develop your mind not through simply knowledge, getting information, but inner qualities of silence, intuition, subtle perception, and perhaps paranormal experience. Developing self that way allows a very broad and deep realization of the whole picture. Not everything, but a lot. So I'll tell you a bit about my process and, my path. And then we'll get into cosmic plan, then we'll get into soul evolution principles, and then I'll do some wrap-up and talk about the next 10 years on Earth. This is a very special time. How many people believe that this is a very special time? Raise your hand. Okay. How many people believe that there may be something like a ascension or harvest or global shift or world transformation in the next 10 or 20 years? Okay. Actually, a lot of people. That is central, in my understanding, central to why there's such a resurgence or increase in UFO sightings and ET contacts today, or in the last 100 years. Because of the meaning of this time in human planetary history. Can certainly be understood. No problem. Not a strange thing. We study a lot, but how much discernment do we have? We hear a lot of ideas, but have we the inner qualities to know truth from fantasy? Either we do or we don't. And to the extent that we really can't smell deception or can't feel that which is flimsy, based on somebody's feeling, not on a clearly rational analysis of a deeply spiritual experience, rational, intuitive blend, mature formulation. To the extent that we don't know that, we will remain confused. Confusion is optional. You don't have to be confused. You don't have to be a fanatic, like you may think I am, but the confusion that I see rampant in the UFO community is not necessary, you know, but we have to expand the focus of the field of consideration. For myself, I really didn't have much interest in UFOs, ET contact, or anything like that until my mid-20s. Now I'm 39. Basically, when I was in high school, I had severe existential angst, which means profound alienation, sense of despair about my existence in this human family, a profound sense of not belonging, a profound sense of disdain for humanity. I have had a lot of anger to humanity, and I still do, mainly towards ignorance and deceit. Deceit practiced by leadership, and ignorance practiced by the unthinking masses, whatever that may be, that maintains the deceitful leadership. Frankly, those are very strong, predominant qualities in humanity. We can talk about that later as to why, if you understand or have a sense of the origin of the souls that are on Earth today, where they came from, what their planetary histories were, you can understand why Earth is the way it is today. Ra talks about this a lot, and in accordance with many sources. So, although I was interested in Star Trek, I didn't really have much understanding of ETs. And although I felt totally different, I didn't know it was because I was from another world, or I was a ET soul, or something weird like that, when I was in high school. When I went to college, this alienation rained down upon me in deep misery. I didn't hate myself, I hated the world. And I felt that I might never fit in here. And I actually felt that maybe I didn't want to fit in here because the bases of human society I felt were corrupt and dysfunctional and severely out of love, out of kindness. I found Buddhism. Buddhism is not a cult, of course. It's been around, 2,500 years. What I really found was the practice of meditation, breath meditation, following the breath, awareness of the in-breath, out-breath, focused on the nose, simply a process by which consciousness is brought to one point, concentration of mind, concentration of awareness. This is a method of developing will, actually. But it also has the effect of allowing the mind to settle down, to become quiet. The Buddhist analysis is that, of course, we create all our suffering. All of it. Now, pain is a biological matter, but suffering is created by confusion and ignorance. We suffer far more than we know it. If you ever sat in meditation hour after hour after hour, you would see how crazy the mind is, and how much the mind never comes to peace. I was giving a lecture in New York the other day, and I'm not sure if this is true, but I said it anyway. I said, either you're in bliss or you're in blockage. And I think that that's probably true. Now maybe you wonder, what does that have to do with UFOs and ETs? Well, everybody knows the Billy Meyer contact, right? You all heard about the speaker last week. Well, does anybody remember somebody called Arahat Atarsata? Arahat Atarsata, any hands? Only one person read the contact notes very deeply. Arahat Atarsata was some character that the Pleiadians Semyase said was so advanced that they could hardly contact him because he was popping in and out and was some great spiritual being. Now, that is nobody picks this up except for a Buddhist, is that Arahat is the term given to the ancient yogis 2,500 years ago in India at the time of the Buddha, and it means enlightened monk, enlightened sage. Arahat Atarsata most likely is an enlightened guy who studied meditation and developed full enlightenment at the time of the Buddha. And he's now the teacher of the Pleiadians, who are so dull that they can't even be in touch with their teacher too often because he's too subtle. Now, that's coming from the Billy Meyer material, not from me. Why is his name Arahat Atarsata? Now, his name could have been Zonatar or Bork or Zork or something E.T. sounding. But his name was the name of some ancient Indian enlightened monk. This is also the case that in Buddhism and Hinduism, which are paths of spiritual growth, they talk extensively about the gods. They call them the Asuras and the Devas. The Asuras are those who are fighting gods, angry gods, jealous gods, doing bad things. The Devas are the gods who are involved in love and helping and are living in a blissful state. The Buddhists and the Hindus couldn't care less about these gods, although they have magic powers and they have vimanas, or they have craft. They don't care. Why? Because they're seeking a goal that's actually even higher. The Pleiadians could be called gods, right? Like the Anunnaki were called gods by the Sumerians, Zechariah Sitchin. Why don't these Buddhists and Hindus and the other groups care about these gods, right? We're very interested in them. Because they say, our destiny and our goal as souls is greater than that, is actually even more glorious than those ETs. Now, this is not hubris. This is, their view. Their view supported by their practice, spiritual practice, meaning hour after hour, day after day, year after year, meditation period, again and again and again and again and again, sitting with their mind, going from confusion to clarity. In their view, coming to a state beyond the ETs. Could be called Bodhisattva, higher self, or Buddha, or Avatar. The paths of the extraterrestrials end at the point of unity consciousness, meaning the extraterrestrials, as we'll talk about later, have a sense of self. I'm trying to help humanity. I'm trying to control humanity. This is the path of service to other, service to self. Love, control. Unity, separation. Giving, taking. Like the energy channels up the back in the Indian tradition of energy lines, Kundalini. Go up. They end behind the third eye, the sixth chakra. Anybody not know what the chakras are? Okay, everybody, even though this is MUFON, everybody knows about chakras. MUFON has a reputation of being really down on spiritual information. But I was talking to Don today, and I thought, I bet lots of people are very deeply spiritual and have a lot of study and understanding. So the point is, the extraterrestrials are not the end-all of the spiritual path. And again, my entree into the field of considering ETs and UFOs, which were not relevant to me in my angst or in my deep meditation, was simply as a result of deep meditation and getting some penetration through the veil. So at the age 18, I practiced meditation for a couple of hours a day. At the age of 20, I was practicing meditation 4 to 8 hours a day, and I dropped out of college. At 21, I was living in a forest in Thailand with flying cockroaches. They were not monks, but they had no hair. I don't know if they shaved their wings, but they were flying quite well. Too much meditation gives one a strange sense of humor. Because one sees that what's called the monkey mind, in Buddhism it's called the monkey mind, meaning hopping, hopping, hopping all around. If you think you're the master of your mind, just sit a few hours with your meditation, following your breath or watching your inhalation, exhalation process. You see that this mind is a psycho monkey, generally. Really. But you can't have any happiness unless you come to stillness. And so in the Buddhist tradition they said, only the Buddha is truly happy. So they called him the happy one. That was one of the terms for Buddha. This is interesting, actually. So, I left the US, I lived in Thailand, I did a lot of meditation, And I forgot my suffering. And I realized that what I called my suffering was an illusion. And my sense of self is an illusion. It's relatively real, but it's transparent. So I had some enlightenment experiences. Came back to America, went to a school in Boulder, Colorado, started by a Tibetan Lama, Chogyam Trungpa Rinpoche, who was a drinker and a womanizer, but was a great yogi, nevertheless, and had a big field of energy, filled the room with his energy, and for all of his stuff, was a very important person in American Buddhism. I wasn't a student, I just went to his school, the university, but I wasn't in his tradition, really. And I met somebody there who was a shaman, who was my roommate, who was just a young guy, but he was a real shaman. And he wasn't a weekend workshop shaman, he was the real shaman, meaning he could go into animal bodies, and he could go consciously out of physical body and read minds. He was the real article. And that was my good karma to meet such a person. But what happened was, first of all, we had many out-of-body experiences. And while he was doing study with teachers on the inner planes, or inner astral plane, meaning the dimensions where souls go after they die, or where you go when you go to sleep generally, sort of Summerland. Not like the Summerland here, but Summerland here was definitely started by esotericists, because Summerland is a term for one of the astral planes, one of the planes around the earth where souls go in between lifetimes. While he was getting advanced training, I was meeting extraterrestrials. I also had done the Robert Monroe hemisync brain tuning technology, where you basically hear two tones in the ears, the hemispheres of the brain synchronize, vibrate to a certain frequency. I had a spontaneous, conscious, out-of-body experience. I wasn't trying to. And I passed through a membrane in full consciousness and was surrounded by a semicircle of sentient beings who basically poured love to me. And I realized that, number one, they knew me better than I know myself, that they knew something, that something was being reflected back to me of my true nature beyond how I understand myself consciously. This is actually a very, very strange feeling. I don't know if anybody's ever had that experience, it's any of you, but it's basically a sense that, oh, now I remember how much I've forgotten. Now I remember that part of me that I've forgotten for the last 30, 40 years, but I actually cannot articulate what it is. This is the mind, your mind before you were born. And I talk to wanderers, meaning people who know themselves as strangers in a strange land or visitors to Earth. And I often say, the only way you can make peace with being on Earth is if you can remember and live the mind that you had, the consciousness, before you came to Earth, before you took a human body. And this is a very serious matter, actually, for people who know that they are not part of this human system, as I do, as some of you may. It's not unusual. I met people all over the world with the sense that they don't belong here, or that this is not home. It's not weird, actually, although it sounds weird. If you remember why you came, who you were, what was your mind, what was your open heart joy before you came to Earth, or before you were, E.T. or no E.T., before you were born, before you acquired your personality consciousness, your personality identification. If you remember who you really are, you'll have greater joy, greater freedom, and you can live on Earth much easier. This is a profound, more profound contact with your true nature. So through my out-of-body experiences, I came clearly to understand why I felt such alienation, which was because I'm not native to this soul group on Earth. I have a group of loving, totally love-based, unified soul organization, or just a unified soul group that has nothing to do with planet Earth. Now again, that's either psycho or it's an amazing realization. There's a Sufi saying, the enlightened man or woman swims in the same waters in which the psychotic man drowns. These are the waters of formlessness, multidimensional awareness. Awareness beyond the hole in the curtain, so that there's no curtain anymore. That you know yourself as an infinite being, even if you can't manifest it fully. You know you are an infinite being. You know it. This is the truth. Otherwise, if you want to be a little bag of biology, it's fine. It's fine. If you want to be a bag of molecules, that's just fine. Because the Creator says, whatever you want, go for it, you know. But what we really are is far greater than what we're being told. Just like, of course, what the UFO phenomenon is all about is far greater than what the media says. The result of having these contacts was that I basically got a sense of why I'm on Earth. Or first, that the fact that, you know, home is not, this soul group is not my soul group. And it may not be yours either. How much joy, how much love is there between people on Earth? Well, in a highly evolved, benevolent extraterrestrial group, there's total group union. They know each other's minds. There's tremendous love and caring. There's no one that's a stranger to anyone else. No strangerness. No anonymity. A complete sense of identification and shared experience, and to the point of group telepathy, actually, and unification of awareness. You know, there's some individuation remaining, but there's a sense of one life. Some people I meet who know that they are wanderers have this awareness for themselves. And so I basically then understood myself better and understood that there's something more going on here than meets the eye. And I then went to college, or went back to, you know, finish my college, and then went to graduate school and studied psychology, got a master's degree in counseling and a PhD in East-West psychology, and wrote my first book, this book, From Elsewhere, Being E.T. in America. Basically, I interviewed 25 people who all said that they are extraterrestrial souls. Walk-ins, wanderers, star people, starborn, whatever you want to call it. And so, let me get into this phenomenon and how it relates to cosmic plan, and how it relates to the present time, and then we'll talk about soul evolution. And I'd like to take a drink, so just a moment. When one is a speaker, it's very difficult to drink because everybody's watching you drink. You're supposed to keep talking. The Buddhist yogis, they do it very well. Some of these lamas, they just sort of sit there, just look at you, like, look at your mind. Don't expect something from me. But I should be not like that. The idea is, now what I'm going to present is a synthesis, again, of what I learned from my own out-of-body experiences, from 20 years of meditation, from extensive study of metaphysics, East and West, Theosophy, and Ra, and some other sources, and working with clients. The basic idea of cosmic plan, of course, is that we are souls, is that we are more than a body, and that we continue as sentient, sensitive awareness beyond the death of a body, into and out of different bodies, in different realms, in many cases across different planets, actually, depending on the age of the soul. And so the universe, of course, is more than what we see with the physical eye. This is the multidimensional model. The idea of, like 7 chakras, or energy centers in the human energy field, 7 densities, sometimes called 12 by some New Age people. Oh, that's not traditional, not a traditional idea. It's almost always 7. 7 planes of existence. These planes are comparable to the 7 centers. In the idea is that we have 7 bodies, 7 concentric energy fields that constitute a body-mind-spirit complex, a being called a human. Body, mind, spirit complex, 3 energy fields, also understood as a 7-fold body, correlating to 7 rays, 7 colors of the spectrum, 7 densities, 7 dimensions. Why? Well, it's interesting, of course. White light goes into a prism, comes out as 7. That white light, esoterically, is the one undifferentiated infinite intelligence of the Creator. The Buddhists don't use the term Creator. The Creator is beyond any term, so we might as well just use a term for infinity. Infinite intelligence manifests as a 7-fold structure of intelligent energy. Likewise, God energy or infinite power comes in the crown, comes out through the 7th chakra, 6th chakra, third eye, into the differentiated forms of the other chakras. Comes out as wisdom, comes out as love, comes out as self-relation in society, emotional, physical. These different differentiations from the one light coming in the crown. Likewise, the Creator manifests in the octave structure, 7 dimensions. This is East-West. This is not a New Age concept. The Hindus talk about a structure like this. Many other metaphysical traditions, Alice Bailey Theosophy does also. Within that structure of 7 densities, planes, whatever you want to call them, fields, realms of experience, there are beings who've evolved themselves to those points of consciousness, to those realms. The ETs are basically those beings who've evolved themselves further along the ladder into what dimensions we would be called the next one or the next one or the next one. Meaning, if we're in the 3rd dimension, right, X, Y, and Z, extraterrestrials represent those beings from 4th, 5th, 6th densities, dimensions. 7 is a sort of a different story. Now, each of these dimensions, each of these realms, is considered a place for souls to evolve of a certain quality. 3rd density, 3rd dimension, this physical world we use with this biological body, is actually said for the purpose of learning love. And so Earth is a schoolhouse for souls who've not yet learned to love. And that's why we don't see a lot of love here. A lot of love is a very simple thing. Love means your experience is my experience. I care about you. You care about me. You're important to me. I'm important to you. We're all close friends. That is a love-based world, not strangers. We're all close friends. We're all intimates. We don't have to be physical intimates, but we're intimates of the heart. This is the way it is in the higher worlds. They're all intimates. They're all soulmates. Here, we look for our one soulmate. This is sort of pitiful, and we never find it. Right? Because we're looking for the one. I look on the internet for these things in my secret life as a non-ET teacher. I mean, there are so many. I mean, if my last name was Wright, I would be married 100 times. I see everyone, all these women looking for Mr. Right. So if I would just say, yes, I'm Mr. Right. Can I help you? I mean, that guy is seriously in demand. I mean, I can't figure it out, but I was thinking about changing my name, but. So we're all looking for our one soulmate, and we can't find him or her. Of course, how much harmony do we have in our own heart? Do you really have harmony in your own heart? Do you really love yourself deeply? Deeply? Do you love your anger? Do you love your fear? Do you love your jealousy? Do you love your misery? Do you love your depression? Do you love these things? Do you love them dearly, like you love ice cream or a pet? If you don't love those things dearly, how can you find your dear soulmate? You know? So meanwhile, all humanity is looking for their soulmate, while, you know, we can't even make peace with our own hearts. And in the higher dimensions, benevolent side, which is 90% of creation, they're all soulmates. They all love each other. Everybody's important to everybody. deeply important to everybody. They asked Ra about names of other ET groups. Ra said that many groups don't even have the concept of naming. They don't even have an idea that there's such a thing that you could do, like slap a label on. My name is. They don't even have this notion in many groups. So they asked, like, and that's why, you know, Western explorers go to certain indigenous groups and said, "What's your name?" And our name is, our name's the people. We're the people. You know, I don't know, what's our name? We don't have a name. We're just the people who are here, and we love each other, you know, or everything's okay. Humanity is a soul group that's not yet learned to love. Third density is the only veiled dimension of life, physical 3D. Below 3D, you've got the animals and the plants and the minerals, which have some consciousness and a body, mind, but not yet individuated spirit, meaning no sense of self. Your cat may have a little sense of self, but the fox in the woods has little, or none. The slug, even less. So humans are evolved in comparison to animals, but they're not much evolved in comparison to the gods, or the higher dimensional beings. Humans generally look down instead of looking up, and that's why they don't see the chemtrails. But this is why humans also have a lot of hubris, is because, not you, okay? Even if I'm coming off as the angry, you know, what's wrong with this guy? He's so pissed off. You know, let me get it out, okay? Humor me a little bit. You know, I mean, people overrate this civilization. We overrate our achievements as a human race. Not you. I mean, maybe you're all wanderers, you know, but, you know, humanity holds itself in great esteem. But that's only through comparison with the animals. Frankly. Because if humanity compared itself to those at the next level up, they would be deeply humbled. And that's why the governments don't want you to know about extraterrestrials, or one reason. Is because, you know, self-serving power or leadership is really afraid that the people subordinated by them will discover that there really is a higher power, far more powerful and far more loving, and totally your friend. Not me, but those who watch human evolution. But they will not intervene in a direct way. That's because there's a law of free will. So, now, this point of third density evolution has a certain amount of time. This is a school for souls. This school has a term and requirements for graduation. The term is 75,000 years. 3 cycles of 26,000, i.e. Mayan calendar, Edgar Cayce, precession of the equinox, zodiacal cycle, 12 times the zodiac signs. Many traditions, the Egyptians, talk about a 25,000-year cycle. Thrice represents the 3D master cycle, the time in which souls here can learn sufficient love, which means heart consciousness, kindness, not religion. Kindness, open heart, a commitment to my growth and your growth, commitment to my own development and yours. It doesn't mean being uptight. It just means life is about my development and my assistance to you. That's it. If you have that consciousness, you graduate or ascend or are harvested. At the end of the school term, 75,000 years, souls have the opportunity to level up. In Japan they call it level up. Like a Stargate, right? 2010 to 2013 is when it's been predicted by Ra, by the Mayans, I think there are a number of other sources. Many metaphysical sources talk about this 2010, 2013. I was in Japan many times as a guy there. Even he says he's channeling. Many people are channeling in Japan. But he wrote a book called 2012, The Day God Sees God. In Japan they use English in creative ways. But that's very accurate, actually. The day you, as creator, sees universe as creator. What will happen? I frankly think, like Jesus, in the twinkling of an eye, this whole panoply of color and shape and form will dissolve. And you'll either find yourself on the new earth, called Terra sometimes, or on the astral plane, or in some other situation. But the reality of our present experience is only as real as you believe it to be. Again, the line between psychosis and enlightenment. It doesn't mean that anything's anything, but it means that with greater awareness, activation of spirit, the spirit energy fields, higher energy bodies, not just your physical five senses and your intellect, something more than that. You could see something, you can see other dimensions right in front of you, not just the physical 3D. So I really think that in our time we will see an unprecedented transformation. And so the seminar tour that I do is called A Time of Global Shift. We're going to be in Louisville, Kentucky next weekend. Not this one, the one after. With the channel of the raw material, as well as John Major Jenkins and David Wilcock. John Major Jenkins, very important authority on the Mayan calendar. Because, in my view, and again in accordance with Ra and some other sources, and many of the people who feel that they are wanderers, this present civilization has only 10 to 15 more years before the term ends. And then what happens is called a three-way split. Those souls who've sufficiently developed love remain with Earth in its new cycle on the new Earth. Kingdom of heaven on earth. The meek shall inherit the earth. Those who are sufficiently bad or evil, service to self, and they're trying their best these days, if they can, will harvest, be joining the Asuras, the negative ETs, or what Ra calls the Orion Empire, and become what one Chinese Buddhist teacher called heavenly demons. And so they asked Ra about, Genghis Khan. They said that there are only two ways that souls evolve into the next dimension. Now some people say, oh, we're going into the fifth. And when you ask them, well, what about the fourth? They say, oh, I don't know about that. We're just going 3 to 5 because this is a special place. And it's never been done before in the whole creation. And our change affects everything in the whole infinite universe, even things that are in the next octave. But if you ask them about that, they don't even know what the octave is. So the idea is there are only two ways for souls to graduate to the next level. I mean, if you don't know love, you better go into love before you go into wisdom. One is that somebody does very profound adept path, deep meditation, transformation of consciousness in a very accelerated way. The yogi path, east or west, whatever, it doesn't matter, clearing the lower centers, working on the higher centers, and basically accelerating the path of body-mind-spirit transformation. Or you wait for your planet, and your planet evolves at the end of certain cycles, and then this sort of like a stargate opens, and those who are qualified level up. And they said that on the negative path, on the left-hand path, guys like Genghis Khan and Rasputin were two of very few adepts on the left-hand side path, power, no love, who were able to harvest early, who went into the Orion Empire before this harvest in 2010, 2013. And they asked them, what are these guys doing? And they said, well, Genghis Khan is basically a shipping clerk now. That's funny. But what is he shipping? He's shipping mind control thought propaganda. The packages, like Robert Monroe talked about rotes, R-O-T-E-S, meaning sort of a gestalt, unified package, in this case of mind control technologies, how to enslave a third density race, transmitted by the elders of their group, who are black magicians, meaning sort of yogis on the left-hand path without love, with great power, developing ways how to control naive, third density, silly people who don't know their own God power. This is actually very heavy. You can say he's a shipping clerk, that's silly. But actually what he's shipping is the transmission of information used on a planet like Earth to dominate and enslave the population without their knowledge. And basically voluntarily. Like You know, we need the tax code, or we need, you know, authority, rather than you can be your own authority. That's heresy. We need police because everybody would kill each other without law. The rule of law, not the rule of self, or divine self, which is the rule of love. So it's actually a very heavy thing, and I totally agree with you if you think that a lot of channeling is silly, because I think a lot of it is also. But looking at photographs, frankly, I mean, I've seen a lot of photographs of UFOs, and looking at lights in the sky and hearing about conspiracies is a dead end. It's a dead end. It's useful. I look at it myself. But then what? Then you're still left with the questions of why? Why now? What do they mean? What's it all about? Why me? So then, if we get into the question of ET contact, if you've had what you feel is an abduction or a negative ET contact, it behooves you deeply to look deeply into the metaphysics or the philosophy here, which again is totally subjective, and who's the authority? I'm not an authority. I just have my view. You're the authority of your own life. As to what abduction seems to be contact by the negative extraterrestrial contingent. Negative in the sense of service to self, using power and domination and deception to gain more control, or using control and deception to gain more power, as I hope you're familiar with in terms of Earth politics and Earth human structures. Basically taking some of the life force from people who are vulnerable. Abduction is a word that should only be used for involuntary violation type contact. I don't work with a lot of abductees because basically a lot of those people feel that they don't know if it's a negative contact or if it's actually harmful or malevolent for them. They actually think because they could gain something spiritually from it, in the sense that they can realize a greater vision of the universe or come to some self-empowerment, therefore they think that that was a good experience and therefore the aliens are good. Frankly, it doesn't work that way as far as I know. You can make lemonade out of lemons, but the lemons are still sour. If you add sugar, that's great. You've added sugar and it tastes nice, but they're still sour. Meaning, those extraterrestrials who come, you see, the way it is upstairs is not the way it is exactly downstairs. Upstairs, meaning in the higher dimensions, souls are not veiled. They know the score. They know about the cycles of time. They know about cosmic plan. They know about higher self. They know about the Creator. They know about who they are, past lives, present, and to some degree of future. And they know their path. And those who are on the path of love are clear and sure. They're not wishy-washy. Those who are on the path of control and domination are clear and sure. If you ever met a negative ET, and they're straight with you, they're not trying to tell you that you're the most important person in the world and they chose you for a special mission and just bend over and whatever, you know. It's curious how many times abductees are told that they're so special for the world plan and the world is being destroyed and they're chosen for this mission. Meanwhile, they're being traumatized. You know, the Dalai Lama doesn't probe people. They don't implant people in Buddhist temples. They don't do it anywhere that I'm aware of. So to think that, you know, people have asked me, well, when people say, well, is that positive, is that negative, right? I would say, if that, you know, I mean, like Whitley Strieber, right? He's a totally sincere man. I don't know how he could call those experiences positive, even though he's used them positively. If, you know, I mean, some stories of abduction are very gruesome, you know. If that's a positive contact, then God help what a negative contact would look like. And frankly, in the higher dimensions, they know the score. They know where they're coming from. Those on the negative path, they know very clearly what they're rejecting. They don't want love. They don't want equality. They don't want you to be happy. They just want power. I've met some of them in negative, in out of body. They're fierce. They're fearsome. They're black holes. Energy drain magnetic black holes of sucking in their non-veiled form. They they don't change because you love them. And if you want to heal them, I think you're naive because they don't want your healing. Some negatively oriented souls come back into third density and switch paths. And this is very weird. I said that to Pamela Stonebrook, who said she's had some contact, reptilian type thing. She may be one example, because she's certainly not dominating people. But some of the people who are abducted are actually members of the Gray or the groups that are doing the abduction, and actually they've come down here either to fulfill a promise to donate materially or genetically or something back to their group, or because they're switching path. This is a very subtle kind of thing. The point is, negative contact can also be stopped, but one has to achieve a greater degree of empowerment and self-acceptance and self-understanding. And so when we talk about the spiritual path, right, a quote from Ra, which is very important, is, know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator. Know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator. Now, the work of, I don't know if I should get into this so much, but how many people in this room do any kind of meditation? Okay, that's great. There are several different agendas going on. Let me talk about wanderers a little bit more. In my understanding, there are about 80 to 100 million wanderers here. Now, wanderers are souls who basically are coming from benevolent extraterrestrial groups. They have been on Earth for one or many lifetimes. Many people came in the last 100 years, but some have been here since Atlantis, early times. Many, many wanderers are of sixth density, meaning they're very old souls. The wanderer is somebody who has basically agreed to be veiled and to come to Earth to offer service to the planet, to humanity, and to their own group. In all cases, wanderers come from unified societies in love, although some are older than others. As I said before, generally the wanderer has a sense of alienation and a sense that there's something dreadfully wrong about being on Earth, and a sense that they're not really sure they want to be here. And human aggression is very painful. And so the wanderer is often very sensitive. Many times wanderers have allergies or some kind of physical problem that they just can't get rid of, that relate to not fitting in to this system. And yet, an understanding of what wanderers signify actually tells us a lot about what our cosmic neighbors, how they intend to help humanity. Why wanderers agree to be veiled when they come in, and they forget their origin, their identity, and their purpose. This is done so as to basically not shock humanity into a vision of a greater reality that humanity doesn't want. Same thing with the crop circles. The crop circles, as far as I can tell, are basically the most obvious expression of benevolent extraterrestrials hoping to kind of tickle humanity into a greater vision of understanding the universe, and hopefully to encourage humanity to understand a little bit more what's beyond the physical world. But they have to respect the law of free will, because it's better for souls to progress at their own rate than to be shocked into something that they're not ready for and that they're not seeking. So, you know what I want to do? I want to take some questions right now, because I think that we're waning. So, there's a lot more that I can go into, and I will go into more. It's only about 9:20 now. I think that what's that? There's some questions. Why don't we just take some questions right now? This experience of wanderers, or harvest, or abduction. Okay.
Hello.
Hi.
you? Well, okay. All right, is it ready? Is it on?
That's just,
Hello,
okay.
hello.
Okay.
Okay. My question is, if you are someone who has had a negative ET experience involving abduction, hybrid breeding, that kind of thing, and you've also had an experience of meeting your benevolent family that, you know, gave you this overwhelming love, and, you know, when you met them, you were overwhelmed with longing to be with them again and terror of going to Earth and that kind of a memory.
You're talking about me or you?
Me.
Okay.
If you are a person who's had both extremes of experience, I mean, do you find, I don't know what to call myself. I don't know whether I'm a wanderer or, I definitely call myself an abductee, but I've always been very afraid of meditation, and I tend to go toward hypnosis because I feel like if I go somewhere too scary, someone can talk me through it. How do you explain the, you know, like the combination effect, and are there wanderers who are also abductees and
Okay.
that kind of thing?
It's a difficult question. Generally, wanderers being those who are clearly polarized in a path of service to others, even if they've forgotten who they are. Their orientation is very strong. Generally, they don't get abducted. They don't have that direct contact from negative ETs. It is possible that some wanderers have abduction. Sometimes it happens when they have a confused notion of service, and they have some sense that they want to help everybody, and there's some kind of sense of self-doubt or some kind of wounding, emotional wounding from earlier years. And they're longing for love, but also longing to be of service at the same time. And they end up getting violated by a group that kind of uses or plays on the wanderer's sort of selflessness, and builds on the wanderer's lack of self-esteem or self-alignment to kind of get in there without, you know, according to the free will situation. And so, yeah, it does happen sometimes that wanderers get abducted. But again, you know, if you're having abduction or if you're having unwanted experience, the only way to get rid of it is to first to acknowledge that it's not meant to help you, that it's a rape, it's an invasion of your privacy, it's a violation. It doesn't mean you're not a wanderer, right? That's talking about the negative type contact is a true invasion. It's a crime, you could say. On Earth, it would be called a crime. And then you know once you face that, then you have to take some responsibility for it. In Ra's view, and I'm not saying, I mean, I agree with it primarily, they said that basically people who have abduction have some weakness in mind-spirit complex activity, which can come from childhood wounding, which can come from having a somewhat violent past life holdover, and some kind of damage to the sense of self and will. And that opens that person to the negative contact. And so basically self-strengthening along a spiritual line. Some kind of meditation, some kind of spiritual practice would be needed. Hypnosis can help you, you know, recover memory, but in terms of making alignment with true self or bringing forth the total will, opening the centers, it can't do it. And so some kind of form of practice would be needed. But if you're afraid of going into a trance and getting too far, there are many active forms of meditation that are very solid, very serious, that don't involve trance or anything like it.
Well, everything you said does apply to me, you know.
Okay.
And I just wanted to say that I did stop the abduction, and then I had I call the angelic, I don't know what they were, but I just know how they felt, experience. So I do think I've made some progress.
It's beautiful.
So
yeah.
That helps. And maybe I'll talk to you later about the meditation techniques that aren't as risky, I guess.
Right. Okay. Thanks. Sorry. All right, don't cough into the mic.
Most of you know that we have a procedure where we do come up and ask questions up here, so for those of you who are interested, come on up and stay on video by using the mic. It's a little short. Okay.
Do you have a question?
Yes, Scott, I met Don Elkins, who was the scientific questioner in the raw material many, many years ago, and he was a very interesting gentleman. And he went around and spoke about metaphysics and its connection to UFOs, and I think that, you know, probably our audience is probably hasn't examined that personal aspect, or how UFOs essentially touch us in that metaphysical way. And so he spent a good part of his time speaking around different parts of the country on that. Could you expand on something that you mentioned a little bit earlier, which is the selection process of the will towards a bias, either towards the service to self or the service to others? I think that's a pretty interesting base point.
That's a very interesting question. So first of all, you know, the union of metaphysics and UFO studies has a precedent. You know, I'm not the only one. Don Elkins was, you know, researching. He's a real researcher. I'm not really a researcher. I'm just sort of, you know, just a guy who talks about stuff. But Don Elkins was an airline pilot, a physics professor, and the originator of bringing in the raw contact, the leader of that group. The link between metaphysics and UFO studies has been there from the beginning, you know, in the Space Brothers kind of contactee thing of the 1950s. Adamski, George Hunt Williamson, Daniel Pye, I think, some other people, you know, Daniel Fry. This has been going on. The spiritual aspect, or ETs as our brothers and sisters from the stars, here to help us. This is the root of modern UFO research. But it's gotten kind of overshadowed by conspiracy, abduction, the technological aspects, and material evidence. As to what Mark was saying, the idea is that there are two paths, because there's a law of free will. And so somebody once asked me in a lecture, will there always be evil on Earth? And I said, well, there'll always be evil in the universe. Evil just means service to self. There'll always be evil in the universe for as long as there's a law of free will. And the law of free will is here to stay. It ain't going away. The Logoi, the creators, those who develop the laws and the rules for octaves, seven-dimensional systems of beings, those big shots have pledged their allegiance to the law, to the maintenance of a law of free will. Law of free will means that in third density, in this physical biological realm, souls are veiled, don't know past or present or future, don't know the plan, and in the darkness have to choose one way or the other. And then they pop out in the fourth dimension and basically know the score and find themselves either on the path of love or on the path of domination and control, and generally stay there. And then go ascending to the level of higher self that way. Higher self is basically this being. It's a being. You know, in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, I'm sorry you guys have to stand there and wait all this time while I yak, but I like answering questions better than just yakking without questions. So in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, there's something called emanation bodies. The idea is that when a high lama achieves enlightenment, which is called bodhisattva, which is sixth density, bodhisattva, love, wisdom, balance, it emanates forms like a body-mind-spirit complex, and these forms evolve through the densities over time. So the higher self is beyond soul evolution. It's the aspect of you that is at one with creation. Not yet finished, but at one. No duality. And the consciousness of higher self, the consciousness of sixth chakra, the consciousness of enlightenment, which is your destiny, is to realize that all things are complete and whole and perfect, right now and forever, including what we call evil. And so in terms of the higher self, honoring the law of free will, just encourages souls to traverse one of these other one or the other of these two paths. And so here's a quote from Ra. Higher self can program only for lessons and certain predisposing limitations, if it wishes. The remainder is completely the free choice of each entity, a perfect balance between the known and the unknown. And we can't get into it so much, but I mean, you knew before you were born who your parents would be, what type of body you'd have, what gender, certainly in the health, what your economic and intellectual capabilities and opportunities would be, and many of the people that you'd meet. You knew these things before you were born. This is called programmed catalyst. Some of the counseling that I do with people is sort of karmic analysis or karmic healing. If you want to know yourself very deeply, it helps to very much know why you chose your parents, what they represented they represented for you, and what you can learn through basically developing love and wisdom. It's always love and wisdom, love and wisdom, love and wisdom all the time. Know yourself, accept yourself, and know others and accept them. Basically, and I won't go on and I'll get to the next question, but what you see outside yourself, you look at me, I'm outside you, or so it seems. I look at you, you're outside me, you're other, or so it seems. Actually, from the perspective of higher self, sixth chakra, enlightenment, freedom, you are I am you. Again, psycho or enlightened, you can choose. Self and other are one, and so Ra never uses the term other, they use the term other self. Self and other self. And so there's a Mayan prayer, you are another I. And so your parents are two expressions of your internal life, and as everybody else is, but they're pretty primary. And so if you can understand why you chose them and what they represent as terms of tendencies within you, you can basically internalize their meaning and come to love and have wisdom and understanding regarding what they are for you internally, and then your relationship with them physically gets much better. This is very subtle work. Next question.
I have a question about the year 2012, and you spoke about year
you look a little like Robert Redford. Sorry. Okay.
I plan on getting plastic surgery, but I haven't got around to it yet.
Too many people come up to you, I know.
I broke up a relationship with a girl who was very talented, like you described. She could go in and out of animals and mind stuff, and I was caught with an old girlfriend, and so we broke up. The only trouble is that the experience was 3 months ahead. She foresaw it 3 months ahead of time.
That you'd break up?
Right.
Okay.
So I'm really innocent. Could you address some of the problems that we will experience as we go into this, time collapse, some of the experiences or problems that we humans will experience?
Okay. Good, thank you. That's a good question because it helps me say some material that I didn't yet present. There's several, I did an interview tonight with, I think it's Jolene, on the MUFON TV show. And we talked about, this harvest or this global transformation process, as well as earth changes, as well as war. There's several levels of this process, okay? At the physical material, electromagnetic level, it is pretty certain that there will continue to be earth changes. Just Sunday, I think there was a particularly strong solar flare or coronal mass ejection or some kind of emission out of the sun. We had pretty heavy weather, actually, in the last few days. Certainly in California, we had, very, very high winds in San Francisco. There will continue to be extreme solar volatility. That affects the planet in many ways, as well as, kind of deforming some of the electromagnetic circulation, as well as making the weather erratic and extreme, and is related to geothermal activity or earthquakes, plate movements and volcanoes. there's really no doubt that there'll continue to be Earth changes and solar changes. There's no doubt that there'll continue to be social upheaval. You know, the Mideast War, right? I mean, they're just going right according to biblical prophecy. You know, if the other armies, the Arab armies around Israel get involved, like, you know, Syria, Iran, Iraq, Egypt, then we could be looking at a Holocaust in the Middle East. But it's all according to prophecy. Jesus was talking about that same kind of thing. And actually I think the Hopis did too. What happens to the planet is, could be considered the birth pains of the New Age. What happens to humanity is very much determined by humanity, but the fact that the planet will morph into a new energy condition, which is basically the end of this growing season, third density cycle. This is cosmically driven, and so there's no question in my mind, and in the sources that I'm using, which are more than just raw actually, there's no question that we're at the end of an age. And what will happen, again, we say 7 chakras, 7 planes, 7 bodies. The planet is activating its 4th density body, plain and simple. To do that, it must shift its electromagnetic grid. To do that, it must release some of the stored thermal energy within the body of the Earth. The source of the thermal energy, which is heat, is actually human consciousness, according to Ra, over the last 75,000 years. Just as continued frustration in your mind creates a fever in your body, or burning, heat, likewise, humanity's disharmony and aggression over the last 75,000 years released a kind of unusable heat energy or frictional energy that was absorbed into the body of the Earth. This has to be released for the planet to change its grid. The planet has to change its grid to basically be in conformity with the sources of energy from outside the solar system. Just like you have an etheric energy body, likewise the planet has one. It's actually, Ra says, that the main source of human aging is the disruption and distortion of the Earth's electromagnetic body, energy body. They say that in the beginning of third density, the average age was 900 years. That the ideal body length, body age, is 900 years in third density. Now we're lucky if we have 1/10 of that at 90. And that's mainly in you know, no matter what kind of herbs and supplements you take, and I take all those things too, you probably won't live beyond, 10% of what you should be living. But it's not your fault. It's basically because of the electromagnetics of the Earth. And that's because of centuries or millennia of human aggression and distortion. And so it's not a question of what happens at the end of the road. It's really a question of how we get there. As, we could get there with more or less Earth changes and more or less social upheaval, war and aggression. And, there's no certainty. And as to the cosmically driven transformation, this 2010-2013 harvest, which I think will occur in a twinkling of an eye, basically the number of people who graduate will simply depend on the next 10 years and how people do with dealing with the challenges. It's like in the Middle East, right? Suicide bombers and genocide in the refugee camp. That's what you've got. So you've got one side doing suicide bombing of innocent people. The other side, you've got genocide in the against the population. That's what I see. That's my personal opinion. When you see that, do you turn to hate or do you turn to love? That's the human choice. Do you turn against this group or that group? Say, I hate them, we're right, you're wrong? Or do you say, I hate violence. Let's stop all the violence. Violence is the enemy, not your group. Your group is not the enemy. Violence and hate are the enemies. So let's love and come together and eliminate the enemy which is common to all, which is not bound up in any group allegiance. That's called using your catalyst. Either you use it for the increase of love and kindness and service to other, or you use it for the increase of anger and basically desire to control and self-power. This is the choice. And so, you know, in the end, I'm not sure how many people will graduate, but there will be a graduation, is for sure. And that, you know, despite the HARP project, and people say, well, the HARP project's main goal is to stop the planet from shifting its electromagnetic grid. That may be true, frankly, and I'm sure that the top boys along that line of that project are negative ETs, I imagine. I don't think that that'll work, because I think there are higher powers that basically are protecting something more important than the free will of negative ETs. Okay, next question.
Okay, another thing is if so many you could talk about these UFO abduction and this positive energy. If those UFOs are so positive and stuff, why do so many people have negative UFO abduction experiences where they end up getting harmed or psyched out and stuff? And also another thing, do you think that the threat of these earth changes and all this fulfillment of biblical prophecy is just some kind of conspiracy to hide the coming of the New World Order in order to prevent the world from rebelling against what the government's going to have for the future?
Okay, thanks. Those are deep questions. Well, you can, yeah, thanks. The first question, basically, I think I've made it clear. There are, you know, cosmic life, universal life is polarized. You've got those, basically 90% of the beings of extraterrestrial origin, not associated with human life, 90% are benevolent. They may be fourth, fifth, sixth dimension. They may be developed to love or great wisdom or unity. 90% are positive. 10% are so-called negative or serving to self. And so they're not all positive and they're not all negative. And abduction generally represents the negative ET contact. And generally the positive contact is a one-to-one thing, which is a very clear experience. I mean, I've had many positive contacts, and you know, there's no doubt that they like you, they respect you, you know, they're friendly. You end up walking away inspired and your heart full and a sense of joy and meaning and greater self-reinforced wholeness, while negative contact leaves you with doom and gloom and terror and violation and trauma and all of that. And it's really that simple. If it looks like a duck and acts like a duck, it probably is. It really is that simple. And people say, oh, Lisa Royal said, oh, let's not be cosmic racists. Let's not judge them according to our own standards. But, you know, there are some objectives in the universe, and there's no tradition of spiritual growth on Earth where they traumatize and terrorize disciples. So, and frankly, the number one work of positive ETs is to respect your free will and help you grow by yourself. That's why they don't come down and do the work for you. And the final question, I mean, in my understanding, the New World Order is the last gasp of the self-serving elite of this planet, backed by the negative ETs of lower fourth density, to basically create an enslaved 3D human population before the curtain goes down. But at the higher levels of that hierarchy, they know that the curtain's closing soon and it won't be successful. At the lower levels, they don't know that. But either way, the more power through fear and domination and control, whether the planet, you know, closes its doors to them or not, the more power they get, the more they can achieve their own spiritual growth. On the negative path, being bad is being good, meaning the more they can do that work of control, the more points they get.
Well, don't you think that is sometimes a moot point, you know, trying to get through all this New World Order stuff? Because because long before we get to that point, there'll just be a second Great Depression and massive deportation of most of the world's people to underground bases, so they won't be able to get to the New World Order point. And also another thing.
Wait. Maybe why don't we just hold that question there, okay? Because you already asked 3 questions, and they're very complicated. So how about if I answer that question, then we let other people ask? Thanks. I think that, yeah, there are underground bases, and I think, there probably will be some economic depression or economic difficulty. I mean, the economy is really poor now. I mean, it's a joke. Just because the stock market is high, it's only because, the blue chips are high, but everybody is struggling. So I can't take any more questions because I want to leave it for other people, okay?
Okay, because it seems to me that most people aren't going to make it past that New World Order, not even make it to it.
Okay, yeah, okay, thanks. Yeah, I mean, frankly, there may be some kind of, fascist kind of world totalitarian state begun in the next 7 years. I don't think it's going to last very long. But I'm not sure if it would be that successful. I mean, actually, there's already a tremendous amount of control going on. Or there's tremendous control of the population. David Icke calls it the prison of the Ba-Bas. And it just means that the desire to conform imprisons us voluntarily. So anyway, I don't know about those, kind of Valvalarian, leading edge, George Green, America West, raving Hatan type prophecies, or I know about them, but I don't want to get into them so much. But I think that we shouldn't worry, because if it happens, you got to deal with it, and if it doesn't, it's a real waste of energy. So.
First, I'd like to thank you for your non-doom and gloom approach tonight. I really appreciate where you're coming from. My experience is not unlike yours. In the last...
1 second. Can I have some water? Can anybody deliver me onto some water? Okay, please.
In the last maybe 15 years, I've had an experience that seems to be escalating. And I'm at a time in my life where I've just been put into a supervisory position, and I'm feeling a real need to give back. And what that's connected to, partially, and maybe you can help me with this, maybe you cannot, is it's weird talking about it, this turquoise triangle that keeps coming to me. And I don't quite understand it, but I feel this overwhelming something or other, good feeling, but a confusion because I don't know what it is. I haven't received any messages in meditation. I feel it's connected to Atlantis. I feel it's connected to me. Sometimes I'll burst into tears when I see this certain shade of turquoise.
Like joyous, like kind of bittersweet tears, kind of happiness, sadness?
More sweet.
Sweet, yeah. Yeah,
but,
sort of.
But a thirst for knowledge about this turquoise triangle. And at one point I felt there was a connection between Haleakala and Mount Fuji and Mount Shasta, but that kind of dead-ended for me. I don't know what to ask you about this turquoise triangle that's so important to me.
So this is a time of great stress?
No, it's a great harvest for me. I'm really at a time in my life where I'm ready to give back. I'm anxious to get involved with giving. Okay,
and you're basically wondering what's this turquoise triangle all about?
Yeah.
Just that? It sounds to me like it's a trigger for your remembrance.
It feels that way.
Yeah, it's basically sort of a key or a triggering visual that touches you at many levels, so that you can remember, more of probably who you are, of course. Certainly, you're here to serve, and you're a very spiritual person, so you already know that developing yourself and helping others is the name of the game. But I think it's closer to this comment of what I said before. coming to know the mind you had and your consciousness before you came to Earth. Blue-green is the color of 4th and 5th chakra. Blue is 5th, green is the 4th. Turquoise is a very deep loving kind of love wisdom vibration. It's very much about opening the heart. And so I think that it's basically a trigger for you to open the heart more and love yourself more and remember who you are more and your wholeness and heal. Because the crying, even though it's, I mean, when I saw these extraterrestrials in this out-of-body, in the Monroe program, I cried when they transmitted this love to me. I mean, I've had many experiences of seeing bliss on Earth, and I've cried. Because, number one, I knew I would lose it. I knew that this awareness of joy and profound love and meaning would be gone when my consciousness changed, which of course it happens. It happens. And I also mourned for the many years before that moment that I had been veiled to myself and veiled to joy and beauty of this world. I mean, I've had many experiences like that where something opens and a vision of glory and bliss and joy open. And in those moments, I felt deep pain because of the remembrance of all the years, and I'm sure lifetimes, of not being in that consciousness, which is called self-estrangement. The self is that joy. That is you. What the hell else is it? It's you, free of the false thinking and feeling and anxieties. Free of all that mind emotion process, the true being shines forth, and it is joy. And yet we don't live that very much. Hardly ever.
Thank you.
Thank you. So again, all of this spiritual discussion is very relevant to the UFO ET thing if you really want to take it further. Mark?
Somebody get that girl's name. She wants to be of service and we need her.
Ever the promoter.
I think one of the interesting things that I'd like you to expand upon, but I'm not sure whether I want to take the time out for this, but Ross states in the context of the material that the systems of enslavement that are in place here beggars the imagination, which is quite a comment to make. And I think that all of our systems are set up to enslave others in a type of pyramid, and I'm speaking about our economy and our government and a number of different things. Do you want to expand upon that
Sure.
briefly? Okay,
Sure. Actually, their comment was that the instances of well-meaning control beggars the imagination. What they meant by that is that the idea that it's for your own good, or you need us. I'm only doing this because you need it. Whack, whack. Or prod. That well-meaning control, although a lot of it's not well-meaning, but the instances of well-meaning control beggars the imagination, meaning so much of what we do, at least at social institutional levels, that we think is helping is really control. I don't have so much to say on that. I would just say that there's going to be there's more of that happening, and these structures of control are internal now to you. You have internalized them. You have eaten their poison. Me too. And this is, I don't mean to be dramatic, but I have found in meditation that, and I don't think I'm so dysfunctional, that it's very hard not to control the breath, meaning to let the breath just be natural. If you want to be just the breath without any degree of control, like a little more this nostril, a little more that nostril, I mean, we're talking about subtle fine-tuning of the attention, right? My mind is quiet, my breath is slow, my body is still, no big deal. Still, my mind is subtly attaching, I want more breath in this nostril. I want to tilt my head so I get the other nostril. Or I don't want to feel the pain of not breathing fully, so I'm not going to actually I'm not going to let myself feel it. because I'm going to manipulate the breath in some way. We have tremendously internalized the systems of control of this world, and this is really a shame. And this is why we don't feel joy, because their misery we've eaten. And I hate to be pessimistic, but frankly, if you look deeply, you'll see that you're not in joy. Joy is a simple state, and very rare. And so I don't think, frankly, that much is going to change in the next 10 years. I think that socially and materially things will fall apart more and more and more, and the structures of control will get as tight as they can without resistance. But tremendous spiritual growth at the individual level can be made. And it really is about not controlling yourself. It doesn't mean you act wild, but it just means truly we allow ourselves to be as we are.
You said in the change, at the harvest, you said that Earth is going from a third density planet to a fourth density planet. Do you know, or have you researched as to whether or not that planet will be one of service to love or service to self?
Yeah. Well, Ra says, and it accords, yeah, thank you. Ra says, and many, the Hopis and the Mayans, when they talk about the next world, the next age, say that the world is going into, will be a heaven on earth, meaning benevolent, or fourth density positive, what we call 4D positive, meaning me and the other weird guys who talk like this. 4D positive means a dimension or realm of love, a society of great harmony and high technology and also high spirituality with bodies, not biological bodies, but bodies, associated with service to others and love and kindness. In my understanding, World War II was the axis, a movement, which determined whether this world would go 4D positive or 4D negative. If the Axis had one so-called axis, the real axis, not today's axis, then we would have gone into fourth density negative. But it's said, and I think it's true, that there are far more harvestable or well-polarized people, souls, on the path of love than those on the path of service to self. Meaning, even though the people who have great power, are really in our faces and controlling a lot about life, there are very few who are harvestable or such development on the negative path that they're going to graduate. And there's far more people who are of the love consciousness who are at a higher point along that path, and so that the world will go 4D positive, and I have no doubt about that.
Where will the 3D people go to?
Ra calls that the vast sinkhole of indifference. The vast sinkhole of indifference means I don't care, sort of, about this positive or negative thing. That's called the 3D repeaters. They will simply go to another third density rock and basically have another 75,000 years to develop the lessons of love and make their choice of path. And there's no punishment, and that's fine. And eventually there will be a third density cycle back on Earth again, although for a while there won't be. And there are many, many third density planets, and there are many, many planets that have a third density harvest like this one, where some grow to the positive and some go negative and some repeat the cycle. It's very common. And some of the wanderers, if you're a wanderer, will go with these people off to that third density world to help them too. Yeah.
When I was a kid, well, one of the things I've realized now that I'm older is that growing up I was right a lot of times, and no one was there to tell me I was right. So that you might comment on that. And the other thing is,
that's a nice point.
What do you say to people who have sort of given up on life and sort of want to squeak through into the fourth dimension?
No squeaking. Sorry, God is a serious monitor of the doors. First of all, I think the first point is really, really beautiful and very important and very, very profound. Meaning, he said, when he looks back on his life, he realizes he was right more than he realized, or was clear or true or accurate. That's just at the level of sort of perceptions about life. The other level of that, I'm talking about both, the other level is that you're living just the perfect life you should be living, even though it seems screwed up. You know, like John Lennon said, life is what happens when you're busy making other plans. You know, I mean, I look at my own life, and I have this, and I have that, and I don't have this, and I don't have that. And this is stuck, and I can't get rid of it. And this is clear, and it's done. And this is great, and this is shitty, lousy. And, you know, I can bemoan it, and I do sometimes. But I also know that it's perfect. It's absolutely perfect because I created it just this way, and it's a perfect expression of what I am and who I am. And more than that, it's me, and that's enough. So that you're not valuable for what you do, you're valuable for what you are. You're valuable just as you are. It's just like the movie American Beauty. This was in my view, this was a seventh chakra teaching. Meaning, incalculable beauty exists in the present moment, although it looks all fucked up. It's good to use curses. I really think that's one of the curses, and chocolate ice cream are two, and sex, of course, are some of the advantages to the third density experience. Third curses help you get out some of the toxins, and sex helps you remember home, and chocolate ice cream is sort of a middle point like that. But I think it's very true that we don't give ourselves enough credit. We can say, you don't love yourself enough, rah, rah, rah. That's true. But in practice, what it really means is that you are more clear than you realize. You see more than you're willing to cop to. Your understanding of the world is a lot more accurate than you realize. And it's just because you think there's something wrong with you that you don't listen to yourself so much. And I have this experience, and I think it's what he's saying. And it basically is the internalization of invalidation. Internalizing external invalidation. They invalidate you, so you learn to invalidate yourself. They think you're a weirdo, or they think you're just a little kid. So you think I'm a weirdo, or I'm just a little somebody. I'm not qualified to an opinion. This kind of thinking. Or I must be screwed up because I'm not perfect. Well, if you're not perfect, it doesn't mean you're screwed up. And actually, you really are more clear. And it's a beautiful point that he made. And you know, all you got to do is be happy with yourself. You don't have to fix up your life. Okay.
Hi, good evening.
Hi.
Wanted to ask you what Ra had to say about people, beings who choose to exit the earth plane at their own hand.
That's a good question. Well, yeah, generally, suicide, my father committed suicide, so I had a first-hand experience of it. Generally, it's a relatively significant karmic liability, meaning a sort of karma is not about good and bad or about reward and punishment. Not. Karma is about efficient or non-efficient use of catalyst. Either you're using your life experience along your path of love or control, or you're not. And so karma, suicide is sort of the major statement to the Creator and to the self, of the self, to the self, of unwillingness to use the catalyst for anything. It's like, I don't want this catalyst at all. And of course, the catalyst is misery and pain that usually causes suicide or leads to that. But the person created that misery and pain, actually, whether they created the conditions in which the external oppressor came in, or whether they created the psychological conditions in which misery and despair arose internally. You know, we make our own lives. You deserve everything that you get. Everything. I deserve everything that I get. Whether you like me or you don't like me, or my room smells like a dead rat, or whatever it is, like my hotel room, a little bit. Comment to the group? No. Whatever it is, we create it, actually. And the thing about suicide is that it's a very heavy statement that I don't want this opportunity. And the result almost always is the next life, one has less opportunity. Like one comes in crippled, or one comes in deficient with some faculties. Now, that sounds like blaming. You know, what about retarded or, you know, impaired people who are handicapped in one or other. Did they create that? God damn, you're just blaming the victim. Esoterically, metaphysically, it's all considered karma. So you don't, either you like the metaphysics or you don't. It's not my view. Suicide is generally, in my understanding, it's generally a very significant rejection of opportunity, and therefore carries a relatively heavy karmic retribution or karmic rebalancing requirement. Karma is about balancing. It's not, penalty. However, if a person's a mass murderer, then suicide may not be that heavy. Actually, frankly, I've read that and I think it's true. And also, for somebody who's enlightened, meaning they've really finished with the need for this experience, suicide is not an issue at all. The Buddha, actually, there was a monk at the time of the Buddha. He went into the cave and slit his throat. I don't know how he did it by himself, but something like that. And they asked the Buddha about it. This is a story out of the canon. And the Buddha said it was no problem. He had achieved release, and he just, wanted to get out of here. Obviously, he couldn't go out of body consciously, but at that level, it's okay. But generally, I think it's a pretty heavy thing, and often the soul that commits suicide needs quite a lot of healing on the inner planes before they're ready to come back for the next incarnation. When you die, you have healing and review, and preparation for the next incarnation. And suicide, I think I met my dead father in the astral plane, frankly, and he was not in a good condition, even 10 years later. So, let me, okay, yeah, come on.
Okay.
Could I have some more water? And we have just about 10 more minutes.
Okay, I want to know where we're going with the religions, the main religions in the world today, like Judaism, Christianity, Islam, and Hinduism and Buddhism. You talk a lot about karma and the search for the truth. Well, as if Buddhism is the ultimate truth. Between now and 2012, will these other religions be exposed as being false and thrown in the garbage can, and we'll all
become Buddhists?
Yeah.
And follow me.
Will this triumph in the end when we achieve true world peace, and the other religions will be deemed archaic and a thing of the past? Okay. In other words, a false path.
Right, okay. Okay, that's a good question. First of all, I would never say that every religion but Buddhism is a false path. Not at all. Every religion has a true path available for the true seeker. Actually, every path can go very far for somebody who sees it with pure eye and pure heart. Some religions don't go as far, meaning, in Buddhism, the idea is to achieve freedom from becoming. Freedom from becoming. What the heck is that? Freedom from all grasping onto mind, body, spirit process. Basically, freedom from attachment to anything in consciousness. Now, that's a few steps beyond Judaism and Christianity, frankly. But the high-level Jewish or Christian mystics would be, I imagine, as liberated as a completed Buddhist saint also. So I think that in the future, basically the essence, that which is universal in all religions, will be seen as it is and will be incorporated in a new world religion. But it'll basically build from all the other previous religions, although eventually the previous sectarian character of its origin, of some idea, will fall away, and people will get to the universals only. And initially the universals will be pulled out of the different traditions, and then eventually the universals will simply be seen as universal teachings or ageless wisdom, meaning love, wisdom, unity, and the path, and balance, and service, and the tools of meditation and healing and all that. And then all of those religions will fall away, all of them, actually, including Buddhism. But then it'll be basically the principles of soul growth and a matter of who's ready for what. You have a lot of questions.
We're going to take one more question.
Okay.
I just wanted to make a statement. Thank you for bringing us chocolate ice cream tonight. Appreciate that.
Thank you, Scott, for your ability to translate some pretty abstract issues into 3D concrete terms. Could you explain more about ascension as you perceive it, and hopefully in terms of the, especially it's sort of a third grade language and that all of us can get, and also particularly in terms of the physical and emotional, and I guess in terms of the abilities, I guess, that one would have, and the changes one would experience physically and psychologically. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and I'll wrap it up with that, because that's a good question to move towards a wrap-up. First of all, I don't think that so many people, or anybody, frankly, not many at all, will sort of fully activate their light bodies before this harvest event, before Earth is fully into a fourth dimensional cycle, you know, after 2010, 2013. After that changeover, everybody who's here will have that light body. Before that time, I think very few will have achieved it, because it's quite a piece of work, frankly. I mean, it's, you know, very profound, adept spiritual practice. After the changeover, basically, you know, the qualities of a light body are similar to what you see in some reports of ET contact, where they have the magic powers to read a mind, or to travel quickly, or to appear and disappear, things like that. You know, these powers are our birthright. But frankly, the powers are less important than the qualities of consciousness. And so, in bringing all this together, what I want to stress is that while there's a tremendous amount of interesting information in the UFO field, and a tremendous amount of spiritual information, some of it is more important than others. Meaning, using some of it will lead you to greater freedom, greater happiness, greater self-integration, greater balance and ability to connect with others and help others, and a greater understanding of this great life. While other material is just curious. If you spend your time with the trivial, you become trivial. If you spend your time with the essential, you live the essential. And it's up to you. And so you can choose the slope or the gradient of your development. Slow or rapid, or gradual or profound. And so be open, of course, to the material that you hear, but realize that some is more important or more essential than others for you. And the test of that is through the usage. That which is valuable proves itself through continued usage. And that which is trivial and unimportant is never even used twice, like many movies we rent. Who would want to see it twice? So it's a very special time on Earth, and the UFO question, the ET contact question, is really a reflection of our own internal awakening as a species and as individuals, wanderer or not. And so it's a great opportunity, and what we make of it basically depends on how much we listen to what we really need. So I want to thank you for having me, and thank you, Mark and Don.